comes from Matthew chapter 5, verse 14. You are the light of the world. A city built on a hill cannot be hid. No one, after lighting a lamp, puts it under the bushel basket, but on the lampstand, and it gives light to all in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others. Each of you is the light of the world. And each of you lights up the world with your loving presence. And I thank you for honoring your own journey of transformation so that you can hold the world in your heart. Thank you so much, Matt. I love that song from Daniel Nahmod. And it leaves us with the opportunity to ask some tender questions, doesn't it? What happens if this is our last song? What would happen if we lived every moment with the awareness that life is a precious gift and we don't know what the next moment will bring, but we have the opportunity to bring to each moment all of ourselves and to touch the world in healing, loving ways. I'd like to say that I do that all the time, but well, not so much. But it is a wonderful opportunity as we embrace this threshold to consider that question. Were you all mindful of crossing the threshold this morning? Do you remember our conversation last week? That at each and every moment, we are crossing a threshold into something new. And we have the opportunity to carry forward some things and the opportunity to let go of some things. Last week, we began a 10-part series based on the book Trusting Change by Karen Herring. And this book pursues several practices that help us engage threshold living with intentionality. Last week, we talked about the first practice, letting go. And we talked about letting go in the deepest sense of the word, as a sense of surrender, recognizing that surrender is vastly different than resignation. Resignation is a sense of giving up. But surrender or letting go is a sense of opening up. Opening to something fuller, something richer, something more, the full expression and experience of spirit in this now moment. And this week, we move deeper into that journey by talking about the second practice. Honoring loss, honoring grief. I have to admit that I have some trepidation talking about this on a Sunday morning. This is a very tender aspect of our journey of life. And it is something that we all experience. And it is very complex and brings forth so much depth of feeling. And much of that is difficult to process and difficult to be with. But here's the thing. Loss and grief are aspects of the human experience that we all encounter. And when we embrace loss and grief, it enables us to cross the threshold, to engage fully in the transitions of life. And so as we step into this practice this morning, I've endeavored to surround us, to anchor us in prayer and healing consciousness. There are multiple chaplains today holding space with us. And I called Silent Unity this morning, and they are holding us in prayer. And for those of you that are new, Silent Unity is Unity's prayer ministry, and they've been praying with people for about 140 years now. So that was a wonderful experience that we can all embrace as we enter this discussion. And, this is less a talk than a series of reflections. And I thought that it was important that I carry forward my own experience, that I anchor this reflection in my own encounter, my own embrace of grief. And the most difficult experience of loss and grief I had occurred several years ago. I had accepted a position at Unity Worldwide Ministries. And it was a wonderful opportunity. And we were living in Canada at the time. And Unity Worldwide Ministries was in Kansas City. I have 2 children. My daughter had already gone off to university and was kind of settled. My son was 17. And he had 1 more year of high school, so I was able to negotiate working virtually for 1.5 years until he completed that experience. And I thought, well, this will work out fine. He'll go to university, we'll put him in a dorm, and he'll be well cared for, and we will move back to the United States. Well, my son, at 18, had different ideas. He was really clear he didn't want to move in with us or continue to live with us. He wanted to stay in Canada. That's where his support system was. He'd been there since he was 7. So he got a job, and we moved him into a tiny apartment in downtown Hamilton. He was 18. He was by himself. And I can remember the last trip down to that apartment, getting him settled. My baby. And we said our goodbyes. We both had some tears. I walked out to the car, and I was putting some stuff in the back seat. And I turned around, and Javon was there. One more hug, one more goodbye. That moment, every time I think of it, breaks my heart. But it was the next couple of years that were the most difficult, because he really struggled. And when my daughter went away to university, if she was having a hard time, I could say, well, I'm 40 minutes away. I can come and we can talk and we can work through this together. With my son, it wasn't so easy. We were thousands of miles apart. And lots of invitations to come live with the parents. Lots of questions, and I've said to Javon on more than one occasion how sorry I am to have left him in that situation. And he's like, it was a decision I made for myself. This was an opportunity for you. And what I can say is that I don't know. I mean, at that time, he was already considerably larger than I was. But I left my baby. He was my youngest child. I left my baby in a different country. And that was heartbreaking. But what I can also say is that we both crossed a threshold. You know, there is a saying that grief is love with no place to go. And I can relate to that, but what I experienced with Javon is that letting go, that allowing my son to make his own decisions and to struggle with his own journey, supported him in becoming an incredible young man, deeply caring, deeply compassionate, wise. You know, I was a mess at 24, and he's just so amazing and so wonderful, and he's still struggling in many ways. But he is his own person, and I see much greater maturity in him than I see in other young people his age. So together we crossed a threshold that allowed him to live into the fullness of who he was, and has allowed me to embrace a young man as an equal. Now, I mean, he still asks me for advice sometimes, and I sometimes give him advice that he doesn't want, but you know, we have this rich relationship filled with love. We're very blessed. My husband and I have that with both of our children. And we speak every week via Zoom, and those conversations are an hour and a half, 2 hours long every single week, because we hold one another with such love. So grief is a complex emotion, and it's really kind of a constellation of emotions. It can include sadness and despair and confusion and anger and denial and guilt. It's complex, it's difficult, but it is an essential part of the journey, and it opens us up in ways that we often do not expect. And the truth is that every day we all experience little losses. And so grief in many ways is a familiar companion on the life journey. And sometimes our sense of loss and grief is about something we had and lost. And sometimes it's about something that we desired and never had. But honoring that experience of grief is tremendously important. We want to open ourselves to the experience, to embrace it with a sense of spaciousness, to honor it as a sacred part of our journey, because it creates new channels for that love to flow. Frank, I'll probably pronounce this wrong, Ostaseski is, I'm sure that's pronounced wrong. He's got a beautiful book called The 5 Invitations. He's the co-founder of the Zen Hospice in San Francisco that was created during the middle of the AIDS crisis. And so he's walked with people through grief for many years. And he says that honoring grief is about being fully alive, fully human. He says there's no letting go until we let in. We let in the fullness of that experience. And that grief is a path to wholeness. And that we need to welcome it, to honor it, to allow it to grow us. You know, I was walking the labyrinth this week and you know, thinking about this morning and how easily we forget. I'm walking the labyrinth out there and I'm like, there's renunciation. Oh, and after renunciation is life. The letting go allows us to embrace life at a fuller, deeper level. The Lakota Sioux Nation says that those who are grieving are the most holy because they are connected to that which is beyond this world. Embracing grief is really rich and nurturing, even though it's deeply painful. And Mark Nepo says one of the great truths in this life is that if we know love, we will know loss. The more we love, the more the loss will hurt. Yet if we don't love, what is the point of being here? When we can courageously love with all our heart, the reward is that through that love, we will know depths in our heart and being otherwise inaccessible. What a gift. Still, things will never be the same. And who or what we have loved so deeply and lost will continue to be our teacher through our grief as our heart is rearranged yet again. I think that when someone or something we love dies, we who love them are drawn to the other side. In fact, grief is how we straddle, for a time, the space between life and death, a time that can't be measured in hours or days, a time in which the deeper truths come in like a wind through the breaks in our heart. So what I'd like to do as we move forward is to take this into a time of personal reflection, meditation, and then we're going to do a candle lighting ceremony. So I invite you to just settle in. Take a moment and just feel the movement of spirit as the breath. That breath might be most felt or most experienced in your nostrils or in your lungs or even in your diaphragm, but just pay attention to it. Just feel that breath. Gentle, continuous, constantly nurturing you on this journey of life. And as you open to the breath, open yourself fully and completely to spirit. Allow yourself to pay special attention to the exhale, the moment of letting go, the moment of surrender, the moment of expanding into the infinity of the universe. And as you allow yourself to settle there, Open yourself to your own experiences of loss, your own experiences of grief, feeling the tenderness, and honoring all of the emotions. You might bring to mind a loved one that you have lost. You might be grieving the loss of a way of life. You might be experiencing a health challenge that is not allowing you to engage life in the same way. Just honor that loss. Feel it in your body. Where does it land? What does it carry with it? And honor that experience fully. Open yourself and just sit with it for a moment in the silence. As you acknowledge the loss, ask yourself the question, is there something here that I'm choosing not to feel? Some way in which I'm trying to push that experience aside. And trust yourself to open to each aspect of that experience. Notice that the experience of loss is grounded in an abiding sense of love. And feel that love in your heart and soul. And as you open to that love, as you remember the sense of loss and letting go, trust in the movement of Spirit to take you through this journey lovingly, tenderly. And as you sit with that, just allow it to be for a while, for a moment. And when it feels right, open your eyes and light the candle you hold. You know, in this journey of life, particularly over the past several years, there is so much that is unfaced, so much that is unprocessed for all of us and for the world. And I invite you to consider that by honoring and facing the losses in your life and activating the love, allowing it to flow, you can make a difference in this world. You know, I've been reading a book called The Millennial Narrative. And it's talking about millennials and what they need from a spiritual perspective. at this time. And they make the point in this book, this minister has spoken with many millennials about their experience. And what he says is that these young people are immersed in loss. They have come into adulthood at a very challenging time in our history. And that if we really want to support them on their spiritual journey, we need to honor the lament, the loss, the grief. From that lament, from that letting go, that grief, to bring forth the hope that they so desire, that all of us so desire. So I would say that our embrace together of our own sense of loss, our own sense of grief, the tenderness of our hearts allows us to more fully love the world around us. It allows us to pour compassion on all those suffering in our world. So what I'm going to invite us now to do is to take these candles that we've lit and to bring them forward and place them in the salt trays as an indication that we're taking that love out into the world. I'm gonna put my candle in, and I'm also putting in a candle for all of those in our virtual audience. Thank you all. And thank you, Emma Jane, that was beautiful. I'm sure you recognize the message there. It comes from Matthew chapter 5, verse 14. You are the light of the world. A city built on a hill cannot be hid. No one, after lighting a lamp, puts it under the bushel basket, but on the lampstand, and it gives light to all in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others. Each of you is the light of the world. And each of you lights up the world with your loving presence. And I thank you for honoring your own journey of transformation so that you can hold the world in your heart. God bless you.
And here we go. Divine love through me blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, all that I circulate, and I am grateful.